Hey, all, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking and Travel Podcast. I am Darren, your host, of course, and today we got a special guest. We have Jen Haslacker. She is of RoamRight, and we're going to discuss why do you need travel insurance, what it's all about, what's it cover. I'll be right back with Jen Haslacker. Welcome to the Fire and Water Cooking and Travel Podcast, where we discuss all things food, cooking, and travel related. Join us as we discuss all different types of cooking methods, cooking styles, all different types of food and restaurants. And of course, we'll talk about travel as it relates to foodie travel, like cruises, all different kinds of food tours, and all that we'll have on special guests to talk about cooking methods and cooking styles, and also travel. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us again here on the Fire and Water Cooking and Travel Podcast. I got another great special guest today. Her name is Jen Haslacker, and she is from RoamRight. They're one of the top travel insurance providers in the country, and I want to talk to you a little bit today. We're going to discuss travel insurance, what it is, who needs it, why you need it, what it, and just overall the best kind to get for you. Jen, welcome, and thanks for joining me. Just introduce yourself a
Thanks.
little bit. Tell us who you are.
Yes, hi everyone. Like you said, my name is Jen Haslacker. I am a sales director with RoamRight Travel Insurance. I have been in the industry for almost 10 years, the last 5 with RoamRight. And prior to that, I worked for another travel insurance company on their assistance side. So dealing with things like, hey, I'm on a trip and now I need to be evacuated. I worked on that side for 5 years as well. So I have a lot of knowledge in what could go wrong in travel.
Well, that's great. So you said, have you've been with RoamRight for 10 years, correct? Or 5?
5 years, 10
Okay.
years in the industry.
Okay. So 5 years you've been with RoamRight, and you've seen a lot. And I know that you handle a lot with the travel agents, correct?
I do. I work with a lot of the what we would call host agents
Yeah.
in the industry.
Now, as a travel agent myself, I do recommend travel insurance, but I can't go into details. So a lot of the policies and stuff, I always have to refer back to the insurance companies themselves because I'm
Right.
not a licensed insurance agent. So it's kind of you know, a gray area for the travel agent side, because people will ask us all these detailed questions and we really
Right.
can only give them, here's the policy, and make sure you call the insurance company if you have specific questions, because we're not licensed to sell insurance. We can just recommend it and, you know, actually send them to the website to buy the insurance. So
Correct. Yep. So that's what our travel advisors do. They can't speak on behalf of the insurance company, but they can definitely refer them to who they think is the best.
yeah,
And then, we can take over from there to answer any of their questions. So sometimes they have very crazy questions that
yeah,
we even have to refer back to the policy to make sure is right. So
yeah. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast, because I know, like I was telling you before we started recording, I personally traveled for a number of years before I really truly understood what travel insurance was, what it covered,
right.
why it's necessary. Especially, nowadays you see a ton of stuff in the news of people getting stuck out of the country without travel insurance, and just the hassle it is for them to get back home. Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's, they don't have a passport or they got injured and their insurance doesn't cover it and stuff like that. So we're going to go into detail. So who is our RoamRight? How long have they been around? What's their backing and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So we're actually a part of Arch Insurance, which is a higher corporation. We do reinsurance, we do mortgage insurance, we do several other pieces of insurance, it's accident and disability insurance as well. So we're just one piece of it. And we started about almost 20 years ago in the travel insurance side, looking just at leisure travel. We also do business travel, scholastic travel as well. But the RoamRight brand focuses strictly on leisure travel. And so about 20 years ago, it was kind of started, and we've grown tremendously since. I think our biggest key is that we want to make sure that the advisors, when we work with advisors, they understand what they're offering, but also that their clients have the customer service and support they need if there's ever an issue while they're traveling.
Yeah, and that's important to us because, we hold ourselves accountable with our clients. So we are the contact. So that's why they don't book their travel direct, because they want to have somebody they can trust to contact. So it's
You're the
always great.
expert, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's always great for us to have a company that we can count on, that when something comes up. And travel insurance, like you said, it can be crazy. There's a lot of things that can come up, and we're going to get into some details that people just don't really think about until they come up, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And then, it really depends on the service that I can provide my client, but it also the service that you can provide me, so that I can provide better service for my client. So
And I think that's the biggest thing when travel advisors recommend Arch RoamRight, is because of the fact they know they can actually have someone pick up the phone, someone's going to respond to their emails and things like that. So that customer service piece is huge.
yeah, definitely. So let's discuss the basics of travel insurance, because I think people can get confused. They'll buy a cruise, they'll go directly to, Carnival or Royal Caribbean, and they always have that little option to check the
Yeah.
box. And I don't even think they understand what that even covers, because that's just a very small coverage. What it covers is very specific to that cruise, and it doesn't cover as much as like a third party policy
Right.
would cover.
Yeah.
And it might not cover the things that they really think it's covering. So let's discuss it. What's the basic gist of travel insurance and why people should look at it?
So the biggest reason, well, with travel insurance in general, is looking at the trip cancellation piece of it. So you want to find, like, travel insurance is essentially you're looking for something that's going to protect your investment or your trip costs. We call those investments. So whatever you're putting into it. And then also so that's pre-departure, but before they go on the trip. But then there's also after they go on the trip. So travel insurance also is going to have benefits for post-departure, like medical and medical evacuation, political insecurity evacuation, lost baggage, misconnection, all of those things. So it's going to have multiple things in the policy when it comes to travel insurance.
Yeah, and we're going to go into some details on some of that stuff too,
I know this
because
is a
it,
really hot topic, isn't it? Like it's,
yeah, it is. And like I said, it can go down a rabbit hole, because people, like I said, even if they're just buying a cruise, they see that little do you want travel protection thing, and they probably don't even know what that's going to cover them. But we're going to kind of go into tell what's the difference between that and what you guys offer, and some of the other options that may be out there. So I always suggest people get travel insurance no matter
Mhm.
what they're doing. If they're just doing a 3-day cruise, if they're doing anything, especially if they're going out of the country, but anything that they're spending a lot of money on, because like you said, the first thing is the protection of the travel itself. If something comes up where they can't go on the trip, or, God forbid that, their flights get canceled or things like that, or they lose their bags, this
Yeah.
is all stuff that gets covered under travel insurance. So let's talk a little bit about what the coverages can be, and um,
Yeah.
how easy it is to file a claim and all that. Because I think people can get confused with, oh, I'd have to file a claim. It's going to be difficult and all that kind of stuff. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, to talk about claim filing, our site is probably one of the best ones when it comes to filing a claim. You can do it directly on our website and submit everything through there. We typically have two people review the claim. So we have an examiner as well as a administrator, and they're basically checking the claim, matching it to what it needs to go to. And that's the same person throughout the lifetime of a claim. So if you have a horrible situation happen on a trip, maybe a spouse passes away, you're only having to say that information to one person who's talking to the other person about it. You're not relying it to a different person each time you have to call in or ask questions. Um, and claims process really for us can be done in as little as 10 days. So you don't have to worry about it for a long period of time there. So that's the claim side of it. Now, there was another part you were talking about though before that about misconnection, I
Just
think, or baggage or
well, just all that kind of what it incorporates. For somebody who's maybe just driving up to Georgia to stay in a cabin over, for a couple days. You
I'd
know,
still get it. I definitely think
yeah,
I would still get it because a lot of these policies that you're going to see, not just with us, but with other companies, it's for any time you're 100 miles or more away from your home on a trip. So if you have a cabin somewhere, you might want to get that, even if it's just a small dollar amount. Like maybe like we have a place out in Western Maryland that we have. It's over 100 miles away, um, but uh, it might be outside of our like medical plan, right? So we have two small kids And if we're out of network there and something happens, I'm not driving 100 miles back to get them there. I might have to go somewhere closer. So having a plan where um, you can get coverage for medical, like you break your leg, break your arm, go to the hospital, whatever, urgent care, get it fixed. And then from there, you can submit the bills directly to us. You wouldn't have to worry about being out of network or in network or anything like that. It would just be something that would be covered with us. Also, medical repatriation at that point. We have some older people in our family that go up there too. And if something were to happen, we could have the insurance on them that would give them the benefit to get their body back home without having to worry about how to get them home afterwards. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So definitely, like I
So
said,
yeah, short trips. My answer is going to be always get the insurance. It's never going to be. There's never ever an option where I would say don't get the insurance. There's
right.
sometimes maybe you don't need to insure your whole trip, like the actual cost. Maybe you want to just have more of like the post departure or while you're on your trip benefits, like those medical that I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's a more of a custom type thing. It's like I said, there's people that think, well, I'm only going on a 3-day cruise. I probably don't need it. Well, is that 3-day cruise going out of the country? Because you definitely need it. Because if you get on a Cozumel this is a story that happened here in the Tampa area about 6 or 8 months ago. There was a couple in Cozumel. They rented little motorcycles driving down the road and they got hit. And one
Hmm.
of them got hit, was in the hospital and didn't have trip insurance, travel insurance at all. And Mexico wanted their money. They're like, we're not letting you out of
Hmm.
the hospital until we get paid. And they didn't have their passports. They were on a birth certificate and a driver's license. So to try to get her back home was, a whole bunch of rigmarole they had to go through. Lots of money was spent, lots of time
Hmm.
was wasted because they didn't have travel insurance. So, you know, even these shorter trips, like you said, there could be something come up, and that little bit of money that you're paying for the travel insurance can actually benefit you down the
Yeah,
road.
we had a extended family member on my sister's husband's side who went on a cruise, very small cruise to the Caribbean and back, did not get insurance. She was in her 40s, and she had a massive heart attack and did not have insurance. And so um, that was just a nightmare for our family, unfortunately. And, they called me because I work in insurance. So I kind of, took the lead on that. But as somebody who even works in the industry, I didn't even know where to start because there's all these different pieces when you don't have insurance. If you don't have one contact of insurance company, then the cruise line's going to work with theirs and they're going to move people. And then there's all these extra pieces that if you have insurance and something were to happen, like a heart attack or anything like that outside the country, it's one phone number and one call. And I think
Well,
that's really important.
yeah, and that's one thing I want to talk about before we get into the specific
Yeah.
coverages and stuff is the emergency contact, because that, to me, that's the first number you're going to call. Something comes up, something happens, you need to be able to call somebody right away. So
Hmm.
having that, somebody there on the other side of the phone that's going to walk you through what to do is probably the most important thing
Yeah.
because when you're out, especially when you're out of the country, you're in unfamiliar territory, you
Foreign
don't know the laws,
languages.
foreign languages. That's my wife's biggest concerns is, going out of the country and not knowing anything about anything. And then, have that ability to just make that emergency phone call to
Yeah. I
your
mean, you
travel insurance.
call, like maybe you have, a stomach bug or something, and you just need to know where the closest urgent care or doctor's office is. You can call them and they can assist in finding one. Even maybe, you go to the hospital and they can't treat what you're doing, right? Like maybe there's something there that they don't specialize in. You would just give us a call and we would help medically evacuate you to the next hospital that could help you. So there's just that one phone number you can call. They do it all the time, so they know everything, which is great, and they'll be able to assist in those kind of situations. People don't think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So let's start going down some of the coverages and I know that there's different policies, and we can talk on that too. So there's like a basic policy, and then there's, one that covers more. Just like any insurance policy, you can buy just the basic, or you can buy that covers a little bit more, or has more higher
Right.
dollar amount coverages or what have you. So just go the basic coverage. What does your basic travel insurance policy cover for, just say, a 7-day vacation?
Yeah, I would say basically the most basic plan you can get, at least with Arch RoamRight, and most of the companies, is going to be an on-trip, well, yeah, on-trip plan. So ours is actually called On Trip Plus. So it's just going to give you benefits while you're traveling. So the medical evacuation, it does have lost baggage and misconnection benefits. So like if you miss a flight to get, you were delayed on your first flight, so you missed your next flight, that's a misconnection. Um, so that would be the most basic plan that you can get. It's you basically are not insuring any of your trip costs. You're just looking to have coverage for while you're on your trip. And so that's great. An example, like maybe I'm flying to um, Florida to Disney. Disney, you can cancel up to 2 days prior. You can move your trip to another date with a full refund, or you just move your trip essentially. So maybe 2, 3 days before something happens, and I'm flying Southwest, so there's really no cost there because you're going to get a refund from the airlines. An on-trip plus plan would be perfect for that because you can keep all your trip costs protected in another way, but you still need those medical and medical evacuation pieces. So that's like the most basic plan, I'd say.
I think the medical to me, when you're especially flying out of the country, because most people don't understand that I might be on a medical program for where I work, Blue Cross Blue Shield. But once I leave the country, that most likely is not going to be, I'm not going to be covered.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think
And
it's another thing. A lot of people will tell you, "Oh, I have credit card coverage or I have health insurance in the US and that should cover me." And a lot of times it's still not going to cover you. There's very specific reasons in credit card coverage. You have to charge everything to that trip. Sometimes it's just they're loaning you the money to pay the hospitals so that when you get back, guess what? You still have to pay them. And then, yeah, with your health insurance, you're 9.9 times out of 10, it's not covering you outside the US. So you definitely need some kind of coverage there for medical. It's a good point.
yeah, definitely. And if you have to be, I've seen this here in the news recently too. Is somebody is on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean and they have a health issue come up and they have to be helicoptered off the cruise ship to the nearest hospital. That costs hundreds of thousands of
Hmm.
dollars. And you have no coverage with that unless you have travel insurance.
Right. And guess what they're going to try to do? They're going to try to charge that card on file.
Yeah.
That is not going to work. In most
Yeah.
cases, people don't have, on average, I say they're about 50 to 100,000, depending in the Caribbean. Places farther, obviously, are going to be 100,000 plus. But yeah, it's a very big expense.
Well, and the hospitals in other countries aren't like America. In America, you can go into a hospital and get open heart surgery and go home, without paying your bill, and they'll bill it to you and charge
Right.
it off if they have to. And that lady found out in Cozumel that they're not letting you out of the hospital until they get some kind of payment. They'll
And
keep
sometimes
you
they
there.
won't even let you in the hospital
Right.
without
They won't
payment.
even
So,
treat you. I think
yeah,
that's what it was. She was they patched her up just enough to where she stopped bleeding and had her in
right.
the emergency room until she had a way to pay,
Yeah,
or some kind of insurance because they weren't gonna, fix her up, totally. They
right.
weren't even gonna
Yes.
admit her. So I mean, it's crazy on how, it's not like here. You can't just walk into a hospital and get treatment and then they worry about it later. A lot of them
Right.
will like make sure, hey, do you have insurance? Do you have coverage? Do you have money? If not, we can't treat you,
Yeah,
so
you can go down the street to this other one, but you're already bleeding out, so you can't make it to the other one. So, but yeah, I mean, it is something where you could just call us, like before you even go to the hospital, we can start already, having the guarantee of payment information ready for you, so that if the hospital does require it to even be seen, we can already start that process and make those payments on the client's behalf.
so we
This
covered.
podcast is sponsored by Fire and Water Travel Services. Let us help plan the foodie vacation of a lifetime for you. Whether it's an ocean or river cruise, tours of Europe, all inclusive resorts in the Caribbean, anything you need, we can help plan it and customize it for you. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, check out fireandwatertravel.com, and also check out our YouTube channel for videos on travel.
Client's behalf.
So we covered the basic and we covered
Yeah.
the medical. Let's talk about what else people can be covered for, which they probably don't even realize. So let's start with just like you said, the trip coverage itself. So, you know,
Yes, that would
go
be the
ahead.
next best one. Yeah, sorry. That would be the next best one is with us we call it our Pro Plus. It's probably our most popular plan. That's going to cover everything that I mentioned before, the in destination benefits, but it's also going to cover for trip cancellation. So prior to the biggest reasons someone needs to cancel are going to be sickness, injury, and death. And that could be of you, your traveling companion, or a family member who's not traveling, or your traveling companion's family member who's not traveling. So it gives you a very broad spectrum of people that could, get sick or injured or death that could help you cancel your trip if you need to for those situations. Those are the big three when it comes to trip cancellation. There are benefits like cancel for work reasons that people don't think about. You've been approved to go on a trip and then all of a sudden your work has something come up and then you can't go anymore. So that's a covered reason in a lot of policies that you can get. Um, military, the military
Recalls, so they call you back
recalls,
in.
yes,
Yeah.
things, those kind of things. Yes, sorry. So those could be covered too under our policies. Natural disasters, things that you don't think about. So those things, a car accident on the way to the airport is another one that could help do trip cancellation. So there's several additional reasons in policies um, that are covered that most people don't think of. And that's with our Pro Plus plan, so a trip cancellation plan. So you want to look at those things too in a plan.
Yeah, and I think when people book travel, a lot of times they don't understand about non-refundable deposits or, the cancellation periods. If it gets too close to time, you can't cancel it, and you're just out the money, even though you're not going on the trip. A lot of people don't understand that they're going to be stuck, especially if it's a big ticket item. If they're going on a, 2 or 3 week European cruise and it gets up to a week beforehand and all of a sudden, like you said, they break their leg and they can't go, they're still on the hook for that
Right.
trip.
Right. And they could just fall in their house, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be something traumatic that happens.
right.
It could be literally you just fell in the house, you broke your knee, and now you can't go. I mean, it
Or you could
happens.
wake
Yeah.
up with COVID. We don't want to say that word, but
Yeah. The C word. We don't like the C word
what we
anymore.
went through couple of years back. But it happened a lot back then, and it does still happen. People get sick or something happens, or you get a death in the family, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you got to plan funeral arrangements, and you can't go. I mean, there's so many things that can come up. Um, just
And we did cover COVID. We still cover COVID as a sickness in our policies. We were one of
Yeah.
the first to start covering it. I think all of them do now, but we always treated COVID as a sickness,
Mm.
not a true like an exclusion because it's a pandemic. We always treated it as a true sickness in our policy. So it's always sudden and unforeseen that you get, strep, ear infection, stomach bug, all of those things are the same.
And one of the things lately in the last couple of years, since travel has become a lot more popular again since COVID, we talked about that a little bit before we got on. But I mean, the travel, people wanting to travel has exploded, and you
Hmm.
have to book your trips, sometimes, a couple of years out. If you
Right.
want to do a good European cruise, a specific itinerary in Alaska or what have you, they book up a year and a half, 2 years,
Yeah.
prior.
I'm seeing
So,
dates all the way to 20, like the end of 26 right now, which is
and a lot
crazy.
of those, I know with like Viking, for instance, they want their money up like a year, almost a year ahead of time.
Hmm.
If you're booking a 2 week Viking cruise in Europe, I think it's almost 9 months prior to trip that they want it paid in
The full
full.
penalty, yeah, the full cost, yes.
And if something happens within that 9 months, you're stuck, if you don't have their, either third party travel insurance or their travel insurance. And with their travel insurance, they just give you a voucher for a new trip. It's not even
Hmm.
like they pay you cash for it or refund you. It's just, oh, you can just take it again sometime.
But
But
in some cases, they can't take it again, right? I mean, there's
right,
something that's
yeah,
going to make them never be able to get there again. And so I think that's what it's important about third party, like RoamRight, compared to supplier or vendor coverage, because most of the time they're giving you a voucher for future travel. And
yeah,
you could have something happen where you might need that money for whatever happened, or the person might not be able to ever travel again.
yeah.
So yeah.
It's crazy. But yeah, but like I said, people just don't understand that, sometimes you're booking these trips so far out that you need to, if you can't go, there's a lot that can happen. I've
Hmm.
got like 3 or 4, trips planned myself right now, going into almost 2026. And a
Right.
lot
Yeah.
of things can happen between then and now, so, I make sure I have coverage for all of those. So, let's talk about thing you touched on a minute ago. It's the political upheaval and
Yeah.
natural disasters, because people don't realize that. I'm going to
Hmm.
Greece at the end of the month. and they always have strikes going on. This is
Yeah.
a big thing. People don't realize it. They go over to Europe and their airlines are always going on strike. So I had my
Mm-hmm.
sister went through this a couple
Or
times
the
already.
trains. Yeah.
The
The trains going on
trains,
strike. Yeah.
yeah, all the stuff, and then all of a sudden you're stuck. Does travel insurance cover that? So
It, it does. Yeah. So I think a lot of the times you'll find in policies that strikes due to a common carrier can be covered. There typically is a time limit though. And I think it's mostly like 24 hours, which most of them go for a day. Because they do those a lot. But that could cover for trip delay, so staying where you are for additional nights, like the hotel and food cost. Or additional transportation to get you somewhere else. Like if
mhm.
you were using the train to get somewhere and now you have to use a car or something like that, or fly, um, those costs could be covered under those benefits. So yes, strikes is something that happens a lot in Europe. So
Yeah,
that could be something that's covered in the policy.
my sister and brother-in-law had that happen. They were in Ireland and they were supposed to take a flight to Scotland, and they had a strike. The airlines had a strike
Mhm.
right at the time they were supposed to be flying from Ireland to Scotland. So they had to get a ferry, so
Mhm.
they had to go to the other part of Ireland and get on a ferry over to Scotland. And I don't believe they had travel insurance, so they had to come out of pocket with that extra money. And it took them forever to get their money back from the little air carrier place,
Right.
because they're just
If they
like,
even got
well,
their money back. I'm surprised they
yeah,
did. Yeah.
I don't even know if they did. I didn't even I know about that, but it's just that stuff happens all the time,
Mhm.
and they had it happen again a couple of years later where um something else was on strike. I think in Greece there was something on strike and they couldn't do what they were supposed to do that day, so they were just
Mhm.
out. So it's that things happens all the time. And political upheaval, you
Mhm.
never know. You're in a foreign country, you don't know, things can happen. Look what's going on over in Israel right now.
Mhm.
People were on vacation, I'm sure, before that stuff happened.
Oh yeah.
And that kind of stuff happens. And, you know, that's where you can get covered. Some of that stuff where you got to be repatriated. You call that emergency line, say, help, get me out of here. Then you got
Mhm.
somebody advocating for you.
Yeah, so we have two different parts for political and security. So there's if there's like a terrorist incident that happens in a city that you're going to within 30 days of travel, you can cancel your trip for a full refund, put in a claim for a full refund. But there's also while you're in destination, if something were to happen, you would contact our emergency assistance team. They'd review it. Sometimes it's as little as, oh, it's actually that country's national holiday and it's like fireworks. So it's not
Mhm.
like anything crazy. But sometimes, obviously it's more. And they'll do everything from like meet us at the airport to, hey, we're sending guards to your hotel to like we're doing a helicopter drop. Like they've done it all. So they're very they're very in depth into how they do the evacuations when it comes to political safety.
Yeah. And if you're going to visit, uh, Vesuvius, and all of a sudden it explodes. I
Yeah.
mean, there's things like that. Or,
Natural disaster, yeah, mhm.
natural disasters, earthquakes. I mean, these things pop up all the time. I mean, wouldn't you rather have something that you're covered, you can get a way out, you can have somebody helping you when that kind of stuff
Hurricanes,
happens? Yeah,
that's a natural
hurricanes.
disaster. Hurricanes
Oh,
happen a lot. It's supposed to be a crazy year for hurricanes, so we just
yeah.
had one.
Exactly. And they canceled and removed a lot of the cruises. So what happens in something like that where maybe the cruise you're supposed to leave, next week and the hurricane's coming and they cancel it or they move the itinerary around? Is that covered under insurance?
So it could be covered under like an any reason plan. Typically, when the supplier is changing like the itinerary, if they're changing the itinerary and they decide the traveler doesn't want to go anymore, they could use a cancel for any reason plan for that. Um, but if the cruise line or the trip supplier is actually canceling the trips themselves, then it's actually on them to provide you a refund or a voucher for future travel because they're the ones canceling it. You'll find that in every insurance policy that if the supplier is canceling it, it's on
Yeah.
them. But if they're
Well,
changing it, there is a possibility with a cancel for any reason plan.
what if they're just changing the itinerary to avoid the storm, but you're kind of not, you don't feel safe because maybe they're still going too close and that storm could always head the other way?
Yeah, so I would be one of the cancel for any reason type of
Yeah,
plans because it's not
gotcha.
a true so like travel insurance is going to cover specific reasons written out in the policy. And so I hate saying it like this, but fear of travel is not covered in any policy. So
Right.
the best bet would to get something like a any reason plan, so they could cancel for any reason. As long as the trip is still going, you can use an any reason plan for that.
Hail, it's Darren. I want to make sure you check out Fire and Water Cooking Edible Creations, Seasonings, and Sauces. The black garlic we use is the highest quality domestic black garlic you can find, from the black garlic and herb compound butter to the blueberry and black garlic to our all-purpose black garlic and our black garlic and coffee seasoning. All are amazing, made with the highest quality ingredients. You can find them on Amazon, Walmart.com, and on fireandwatercooking.com. Check them out, guys. So let's touch on that. So there is, policies and or riders or add-ons called cancel for any reason, but they have limitations on the amount or the percentage, correct?
Right. They typically will give back. The highest I think I've seen is 75%. It could be anywhere from 50% up. Typically it's about 50%. So if you have a trip at $3,000 and a couple days before maybe something happens and you're just not going, a boyfriend and girlfriend going on a trip, let's just use that. They
Yeah,
break up,
exactly.
they have a
Right.
cancel for any reason plan. One of them doesn't want to go or both of them don't want to go. With our RoamRight, you could get up to 75% back. I used $3,000, which was a bad example. Let's do $1,000. So we could give them $750 back on their trip if they have an any reason plan. But under that same plan, say someone were to get like a covered reason sickness, like they got COVID right before the trip and they can't go, that will still give them 100% back under that same
Right.
plan. It's just that any
Yeah.
reason that's going to be 75%.
Yeah. And the any reasons, like you said, they break up, they just don't want to go anymore. They lost their job and they don't feel they can afford it. It's not really technically something that they physically can't do, or they had, medical or something. It's more of just I just don't want to go now.
Yeah. A lot of times, so what we ask is like our travel advisors, they can ask us like, is this a reason we should get canceled for any reason? And some of those reasons can be like, I always use the boyfriend and girlfriend, or like a destination wedding. Maybe you don't think the groom's going to show up, or like a pet. So we don't have pet coverage in our actual plan, but with a cancel for any reason, if you have a pet that's sick, and they, you want to stay home because of that, that's an any reason type of plan that you would want to get. Like if you're concerned about your pets.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of just walk down a little
Yeah.
bit what the major in-trip coverages are. So you have like we touched on, so medical, we touched on emergency, political and all that. So let's just say you lost your bag. You get to the airport and your bag's not there. So that's covered, correct?
There is coverage for that. There's typically on any insurance policy, there's going to be like a time limit that you have to reach first. But then after that, there could be benefits for like just getting the essentials that you need. Obviously, you're not going to buy thousands and thousands of dollars worth of clothes. There's always going to be a price limit too. But things that you need to get through a couple days, hopefully you're getting it in a day or two for that. But yeah, there's baggage coverage there, lost baggage.
Trip delay. Now, what does trip delay cover? Because that can mean anything. To me, it's like, just my flight's going to be late an hour when I'm transferring from Frankfurt to Greece is not really going to be trip delay.
Right. There's typically an hour, delay that has to hit for that. Luckily with trip delay, it's any reason of a common carrier. So sometimes with benefits, you're going to see it has to be because of weather or mechanical. But with trip delay for us, it's any reason. So any reason that you're delayed for, I think it's 6 hours, might be wrong there. I think it's about 6 hours or more. You can use that benefit that would keep you where you are. So additional hotel nights where you're actually at, food, because you're now staying somewhere longer. So food expenses, and then local transportation. So maybe you're at the airport. Now you need to get an Uber back to a hotel. So we could pay for that as well.
Yeah.
That's
So
trip
it's
delay.
actually paying for actual expenses. It's not just like, okay, we got $1,000 now because we were 4 hours late or 6 hours late.
Right.
Yeah, it's
It
like
is.
but you have to actually have expenses. So, hey, at 6 hours, we're late. I had to get an Uber. I had to go get food because we're staying in the airport a lot longer than we thought we were going to. So you'd have to have expenses to actually submit.
Correct. Yeah. So most of the insurance, and I mean, insurance in general is just to make you whole from what you have lost. So
Right.
it's just for those paid expenses that you have.
Right. Itinerary change. I know that can to some extent be claimed. But if you're like on a cruise and let's say they say, oh, well, you can't go to Cozumel because like with the hurricane that
Right.
we went to Nassau instead. Is that really a covered reason?
It could be if you had an excursion in the original destination that you're not getting a
Gotcha.
refund for,
Yeah.
and that the cruise line's not giving you anything to make up for
Right.
it. So you could, yes, you can, yeah, claim that
Just to make you whole from
just to make you whole for what you've lost, right?
for what you lost. Gotcha. Um, let's just see. I think that's probably about all. Is there anything else that you can think of that I didn't touch on that maybe covers that
Um,
people wouldn't realize?
well, so I guess there's two things. So there's misconnection, which is kind of like trip delay, but it actually helps get you to where you want to go faster.
Gotcha.
There are time limits, obviously, with that too. And then the other thing we didn't really mention is that with the medical coverage, it's primary medical. So we're going to pay immediately. A lot of the insurance plans that you're going to look at, it's either going to say primary or first payer, or it's going to say secondary or excess. When it's secondary or excess, those companies are requiring you to submit to your domestic insurance first. Play the game with them for them, probably most likely to deny it, and then you'd have to submit to the travel insurance company. So with us, it's primary medical. So you would just submit everything directly to us or call us
Mhm.
immediately to get that started for you.
Let's say, okay, so let's just say I'm in Greece,
Mhm.
on the next week or the week after, and I get off the plane, heading to the cruise ship, and I trip and I break my leg and I got to go to the hospital.
Mhm.
When I am being admitted, I just tell them I have travel insurance through Arch RoamRight, and that everything should be smooth as silk, correct?
Right. They might have you call, but that's the only other thing. Like they might
Yeah.
have you call
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
As long as they know you having coverage, then they're going
Hmm.
to be hokey dokey fine. Give me all the information and, make sure we get this all settled up. So yeah. And that's the biggest thing. Like I said, my biggest thing is when I'm out somewhere where I'm not familiar, I want to have the peace of mind that I can call somebody and say, help. What
Yeah.
do I do? What do I do? Just help me walk through it, even if it's just, where I'm stuck or, the flight delay thing, all right, my flight's now 4 hours delayed and my cruise ship's leaving, in 6 hours and I'm not going to make it,
Right.
what do I do? Help me, you know? So if incidents like that, where the flight delay, do we call the insurance company first? Do we try to work with the airline first? How would that kind of work?
With flight delay, it's a little different. So you would want to work with the airline first or with your travel advisor. Um, it- a lot of the insurance companies don't have their own like concierge service where they can assist with that. There might be a few that do, but most of them don't have that. So that would really fall on the traveler. We're more than happy to give recommendations and closest places, but we're not going to be able to actually book those things on behalf of
Mm.
the client.
But if they missed their cruise because their flight was, connection didn't make it and all that, you're just making them whole from whatever they lost if the cruise, they couldn't get on the cruise and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that would be under our trip delay benefit and typically under I'm sorry, our trip cancellation benefit. And so they are very specific reasons for that. So like if your airline was canceled for weather or mechanical reasons or a strike of an airline for more than 24 hours and you missed your cruise, then that could be something that's covered completely at 100%. Um, but if it's something where it's less than that, we'll typically try to see if we can help the client get to the next port of call, and then go from there
Gotcha.
and do some like misconnection benefits there.
Yeah. Like I said, so a lot of this stuff is, like I said, people don't really think about things that can pop up and happen when you're
Everything
traveling.
pops up. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. And, a lot of people now that are traveling, they're doing a lot more international trips because of COVID, because they're like,
Hmm.
I put these trips off a long time. I always said when I get, older, I'm going to go to Europe or I'm going to go, to Asia or I'm going to do these exotic longer trips that I've always wanted to do. And they're starting to do them, but, you know, they don't really understand what that entails. So it's like I'm dragging my wife to Greece for the first time we're going to Europe, because she's always like, yeah, I don't know. I thought I could do them later, my life when I'm,
We're
I have
all
nothing
getting
else.
older, right? We are at
Yeah.
later.
When the kids are all out of the house and I don't have anything else to worry about. And it's like, no, we got to start doing it now while we can, because anything can happen. We learned that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but in order for us to have more peace of mind, you have the travel insurance to, take care of some of these concerns that you may have, because it's always, what happens if I have a heart attack while I'm in Greece and I don't speak the language and I don't know what's going to happen,
Right. Yeah. And
so
my husband and I actually have gone to Europe a couple times. And the first time was after COVID for me. He actually was in the military serving over there, so he knew Germany pretty well. But um, I was kind of scared of leaving the kids for, seven or like almost 10, 12 days, I guess it was in the end. And one of the benefits in our policy is that we had someone else watching them. She's like an extended family member. So she's not considered a true family member in our
right.
policy, but
Yeah.
she was considered a caregiver, which is something that's covered in our policy. And she was watching the kids. So if something were to happen to her and like we needed to get home, that's actually a covered reason. Or like maybe she got something sick right beforehand and couldn't watch the kids anymore. That could have been a covered reason to cancel the trip altogether. So there's things like that that you maybe think of when you're talking about, the kids being at
Yeah.
home still. So um yeah, it covers child caregivers as well.
See, and that's another point. I think people need to really understand everything that's covered in these travel insurance. It's not just, the trip cancellation. There's so much more that goes into it that can be
Hmm.
covered if you look into it and you get the right policy. So let's talk a little bit about, I know there's single trip policies and then there's annual policies, and they both cover similar stuff, but kind of differently, because annual policies can do multiple trips, but they might not cover as much, or they have a limit of
Hmm.
how much of one thing they may cover. So is it a benefit to get an annual policy if you're doing a certain amount of, travel per year, or should everybody just get single trip insurance all the time? Or
So I like the single trip plans for all trips because you're covering exactly like 100% of each trip or whatever you want to do per trip. An annual plan is nice when it comes like if you do have multiple trips and you just want to like set it and forget it kind of thing, the annual plan is great for that. You are getting, like you said, reduced benefits in that. So you're paying more obviously per trip if you do the single trip. So with an annual plan, you're going to pay less, but because of that, your benefits are less in the plan. Um, Also, you could use up your annual plan very quickly. Our limit is $10,000 per person for the entire year. So
mm,
if you have a river cruise, you might hit 10,000 on the first trip and have to cancel. You could lose all that and not have anything left in the trip cancellation part of it. So there are, if you want to set it and forget it, you're not doing a lot of expensive trips that year. The annual plan might be beneficial for you, but typically I would say for myself, I always do single trip plans. I never have done an annual plan for myself.
yeah, and I could also see, could they work together if you had an annual plan, and let's just say you did, you had 4 trips and all of a sudden now you've had a couple claims and you wore it out. Now your next trips, you can go ahead and buy a single trip plan, correct?
For that specific trip, yeah. So you
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to use any of the benefit. You can't combine benefits from
Right. No,
different
no, no, that's
policies.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
So
just
yeah,
saying
they
if
could
you,
buy
let's
an
just say I had an
additional.
annual plan and 6 months into it, I've already made all my claims on the other one, and I've got another couple trips coming up, and
You
I
could buy
know
a
I can't,
single trip.
I can buy
Yeah.
the single trips, but I can't combine them because I would have used all my benefits on the annual
Right.
plan
Or I mean,
already. So
or even if you bought an annual plan and maybe you do have one trip that's really big, and
mhm,
you want to insure that alone, maybe you haven't had any claims, you can do
yeah,
that as well. So you would just
yeah.
use that single trip plan for that one trip, but
Yeah,
then
just
use
don't
the
try
annual
to
for everything
file
else.
claims for both on each
Right. Yeah. You
way.
can't file
Yeah,
claims for both. You have to pick
yeah,
one or the
that's
other.
called insurance fraud, and you will go to jail for that. So
Yeah.
don't do
That's a
that.
whole nother hour.
Yeah, definitely. We're not going to get into legalities here, guys. So we're just assuming everybody's going to have legitimate claims that they're filing for.
Right.
And we highly suggest that that's how you use travel insurance, because
Yes.
insurance fraud, it will send you to jail. So, personally, I do have a, annual plan, but like you
Hmm.
said, if it's, a big trip or somewhere where I think I'm going to need more coverage, I definitely would get a single trip, that's
Yeah.
going to cover everything I need, because that's, if I go on a 3-day cruise or something, that annual plan is going to be fine for me. But if I'm doing a 2-week European cruise with extra extensions, and it's $20,000, and I'm going all these different places out of the
Get a
country,
single trip. Yeah.
get a single trip,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. So I think some people get confused, like, well, I can get an annual plan and it's only $1,000 or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't cover as much. So
Right. And if you have
yeah.
kids under 18, you have to buy each person their own plan with an annual plan. So it could cost more because a lot of times with the travel insurance companies, your kids are included. We have a one for
Mhm.
one, so one child with every one adult is included in the insurance cost. So it could still cost more with an annual plan than a single trip plan in that case.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So there's a time and a place for both of them, but most likely you're going to want a single plan, a single
Yeah,
trip plan, because it's going to cover more, and you're going to make sure that, like you said, that everything gets covered that needs to be covered.
yeah.
You
And
won't
I'm the
run out of it.
cheapest person you'll meet. So for me to say that I'd rather buy single trip plans for everything should say something.
Right. So what do you know off the top of your head, the biggest or number one claim that people file for? Is it something that the industry tracks?
It would be the sickness and injury, um, are the biggest too, because there's just, it's as little as an ear infection or a stomach bug. It could be as severe as a heart attack or death. So that is the number one
Is that
issue that
during the
people
trip
claim.
or pre-trip?
Typically, well, pre-trip for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's for the cancellation.
What's the top one that's in, during the trip? If you don't know, that's okay.
No,
I'm
I
just
would say
wondering.
it's almost the same thing, to be honest.
Medical.
Yeah, I would think the next is probably something to do with like airlines.
Yeah.
So trip
That's the
delay,
season.
baggage, or
That's what I
misconnection,
would have
right?
guessed. I would have
Yeah.
guessed, missed connections or trip delay because of airlines,
That's
because
probably a
airlines are
close
so messed
second.
up right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I bet you that's a second, all of that.
Well, and that touches on that point we were talking about earlier, because travel is so popular now. That's why the airlines are so messed up. They're so busy. The cruise ships are all sailing full. All these trips that, the popular, guided tours and trips like that, they're all getting full. I mean,
Yeah.
people are booking these things up, and like I said,
And
years
it's
in
not
advance.
stopping. Yeah. It's definitely not
Yeah,
stopping. Normally we see around like election time, things kind of like quiet down a little
yeah.
bit. But I mean, people are full blown going with these trips.
Yeah,
So,
inflation's not slowing it down.
no,
Inflation is going crazy. Everything costs so much more, but people are booking trips left
they're
and right,
still booking trips. Yes.
because they're going to spend the money on the things they want to do, and they want to travel, and they want to have fun, because they know that, next week something could happen, and, they're not
COVID
here anymore.
2.0. No.
Yeah, and it's just, it literally is. I think people are just, they're at that point now that we went through that, and they said, I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to do those things that I kept putting off. And that's why they're booking all these trips. That's why they're building, every cruise line's building new cruise ships.
Hmm.
They're coming out with new itineraries. And for
Cruises
all
are like one of the top still right now are the top destination choices to do
Yeah.
right now is the cruises are, I mean, they've really come back strong, which is great for them.
Yeah, I had a lady on from Alma Waterways river cruising, and they're building more ships. They're building another 9 ships, and they already have like
Hmm.
25. So, the river cruises are exploding,
And you're
and
seeing younger
ocean
people
cruises.
doing them. That's the other thing that
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
found. Um, More people in their 30s doing those
yeah.
river cruises than ever before. Um,
The
so,
expedition cruises are starting to explode, going to
mhm.
Antarctica
Oh yeah,
and Greenland and all those that go to exotic places that people never thought they could go to before. There's more companies coming out just to do those. It's just,
hmm.
and they're lining up, they're filling them up. It's not like they're, it's slowing down.
And
And
space
that's,
travel is coming too.
oh
So
yeah. So how are you guys going to cover space travel?
we
Let's
are
start.
not covering it right now. I don't know who would be.
All right. Well, if
It's going to be
anybody
very
does,
touchy to start, I think, for
yeah,
sure.
it'll be a few years, and then get some actuaries in there to kind of figure it out, punch the
Yeah,
numbers, get the
for
little
sure.
abacuses, and figure out what it's going
Hmm.
to cost. All right. So is there anything else you want to talk about? What's, anything different, new coming with Arch RoamRight? The best way to get travel insurance, of course, is if you're using a travel agent, ask their advice. Like
Absolutely.
I have a number of different companies I use. I love Arch RoamRight, but I also have others. So there might be something that might fit their particular need. If they have a particular company they might like instead, we can look at all that as well. So can they buy it on their own? Can, instead of going through, let's just say, the cruise line or the hotel or whatever they're booking through, or the travel agent, can they pull you up online and buy it direct?
They could, roamright.com. But of course, we would say ask your travel advisors who they're
Yeah.
using and working with there. So,
Well, I'm a travel advisor and I suggest that too, but I know there's people out there because I didn't used to use a travel advisor before on
right.
some of my
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff. So
RoamRight.com is the way to go. It's
yeah,
so
so there's going to be
simple.
people listening to this that don't, they like booking their stuff on their own, and I know many people that do that, but so they have an option to be able to buy it without. And like I said before, buying it through the cruise line itself may not be always the best as far as coverage goes, because it's the cruise line's pretty much protecting themselves when
Hmm.
you buy their policy. It's not really protecting you as much, it's more protecting them. So if you are going to buy travel insurance through a cruise line or another maybe all inclusive or something that you're booking yourself, look at a third party, look at Arch Right, just go to their website and compare what the coverages are
Hmm.
compared to what you're getting.
Yeah, and you could really, if you like what you're seeing with the supplier coverage, look, so there's the pre and post, right? So the pre is probably pretty good with the supplier that you're using, the cruise line, 100% cash back or 100% voucher. Look at their post departure. Typically, their medical evacuation is going to be under $30,000, especially for a cruise line. Their medical is going to be secondary coverage, is going to be very little. So in those cases, if you like what you're seeing for the post or the pre with the cruise line, you could always still buy like an on trip plus plan for while you're on the trip and give you those higher benefits for medical evacuation and um, medical. So there's
Yeah.
that too. Yeah. And
So
with
you have
cruise lines, sorry, just one more thing before I forget. With
no, go
cruise
ahead.
lines, typically they only cover what you're buying through the cruise line. So if you're buying excursions somewhere else, if you're doing a pre and post somewhere else, or your airlines with somebody else, they're not going to cover those things. So you might just want to look at a third party to bundle it all together and be done with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I always suggest people, at the bare minimum, if you're wanting something cheap that's just going to cover your cruise, yeah, that's fine. But if you're wanting, like you said, your airfare covered if you're flying in, some of that other stuff that they're not going to cover because that's not protecting their little bubble,
Hmm.
make sure you compare. Like you said, make sure the medical is primary and not secondary and very limited.
Evacuation. Make sure your evacuation's high.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
cruise lines,
yeah.
obviously they're not going to have high evacuations because they know how much it's going to cost. So,
The last cruise I was on, we had two people medically evacuated from it,
mhm.
and
Yeah, it
and
happens.
it happens all the time, and that cost them a lot of money if they didn't have travel insurance, and if they just had the little travel insurance from the cruise company. So,
Yeah.
well, all right, Jen, I really appreciate you being on, and well, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
thanks again. I appreciate it, and thanks guys for listening. And anything else you want to talk about, Jen, before we go?
No, thanks so much for having me today. I really appreciate talking about
I
travel
really, yeah,
insurance. Yeah.
I really thank you for coming on. And like I said, hope a lot of people got a good bit of information from us both right here.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Thanks again,
No,
and I'll see you
thanks
on
so
the next
much.
one.
Thanks. See you.
All right, all. Thanks for joining us again here at Fire and Water Cooking and Travel Podcast. But I hope you got some great information. Check out the link below for Arch RoamRight if you want to purchase a policy or get more information. You can also contact me at fireandwatertravel at gmail.com, or you can visit our website, fireandwatertravel.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next Fire and Water Cooking and Travel Podcast.